but this is the live stream that isn't the regular live stream. This is TPS Traffic Jam. It's a little different. And people watching, they probably think this looks a little different because it does. And I've got John Westhaver here on the screen, and you probably don't know him. Or maybe you do. I shouldn't judge. But this is an episode where we talk to my friend John about stuff and things. We're jamming about traffic on TPS Traffic Jam. Join us for a little while, and what we'll talk about, well, let's just get into it. We are going to talk about everything that is important in the world today, but really we're just going to talk about us and your story, because we're going to reintroduce you to the world, at least on our channel, and see where it goes. John, welcome back. Thanks for joining me. It's been a while since we've chatted, other than texting on LinkedIn. What's going on? What's new in your life?
Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm happy to be here. What's new in my life? A new school season for the kids and getting back to school and getting back to that routine. Yeah, and so just focusing on that and working with more schools and organizations to drive home that message of road safety.
And I remember recently, and sorry to cut you off, I remember recently your presentation or parts of what you do is being introduced into a curriculum in a particular school board.
Yeah, well, not even a school board, actually. So I'm currently working with the province of New Brunswick.
Yes.
So at the education level, or department level. So we're working on a special project, a little video workshop that will be played in every classroom in the province of New Brunswick. So we're just working on that right now. We're going through all the steps. We're hoping to launch this for next semester.
Okay.
And it's just a huge accomplishment for me to be able to bring this message of overcoming adversity and helping the kids in the space of personal wellness and well-being. And so it's just a really exciting opportunity for me. And and I love that I get to do this. I get to be that person that brings this message to the classroom. And every student from grades 6 to 9 in the province of New Brunswick, whether English or French, will have the opportunity of hearing my story and doing some workshop questions on my story and the teachings that I teach inside of the video.
So let's back up, because for many people they're being introduced to you for the first time. So they know your name is John. What's your story?
Yeah.
I'll let you do it.
So why do I look so good? So I was actually burnt in a car crash in '94. So 30 years ago, this fall, I was entering into my senior year of high school, grade 12, and April of '94. So that April, about a month and a half before my high school graduation, I was involved in a fatal car crash where 3 of my teen friends were killed, and I was left with life-threatening burns to 75% of my body. I was in a month-long coma. I was initially in the hospital in the burn unit for 2.5 months. My life as a regular teenage guy was this fun-loving teenage guy, full of life, loved life. And when I woke up after the coma, being in the hospital for a month, I'm in a coma. The last thing I remember was I'm out with my friends. It's Friday night. We're having a good time. Nothing can go wrong. Got a month and a half left to high school graduation. And just life is great. And then I wake up and I'm in a hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely surrounded, by doctors and nurses. And I'm connected to a multitude of life-saving devices. And I am completely wrapped in bandages. Now, in that moment, I wasn't in a lot of pain because of the medication, but I've got machines like pumping fluid in and out of my body, and I wasn't a sick kid growing up, so I'm not used to the hospital setting. So when I woke up, I was scared. I was worried. I was like, what's going on? And for a regular teenage guy to go through this, I got to tell you, I was not prepared for what I was about to go through, the challenges, the difficulties, the life that I would face. I was not prepared for this. Like, no teenager is ever prepared for what I went through. Luckily for me, I did have a lot of support from my family, my friends, my community. They helped me through this, but it was a stumbling path for sure because there was a lot of mistakes I made going through this recovery and a lot of good things. But I now get to teach other people about what I went through, what I used to overcome everything, and what I get to create going forward. So,
I think you said something really important. You said no teenager is prepared for this. I don't think any human being on the face of the planet is prepared for what you went through. There's no
yeah.
planning that could really get you ready for losing friends in a collision, being injured in a collision, and having your life change overnight, in an instant. In fact, a couple people reaching out on TikTok, and I see a Kayla Draconis who's coming in by YouTube. They're curious if this is live. This is live, so if you have questions for John or if you have questions for myself, feel free. We're not talking about traffic laws and answering questions like that. That's not what this is for. We're talking about inspirational stuff. We're talking about the events that took place that John was referring to in his collision. We're talking about how you can move past those things and move forward with your life. We're talking about making meaningful change. I think I think that's so. If you've got questions, by all means, I've got 400 people watching. Let us know if you've got questions. But we've had this conversation before. We know I know your story, and I did misrepresent you earlier. I thought I knew you'd lost friends. I for some reason I thought it was two. I stand corrected. It was three, and I said 90% of your body is 75%. So it's amazing how time since we've spoken last, those numbers inflate and deflate and change. So it's incredible to know the impact that collision had on your community, not just you, because obviously
Yeah.
you lost friends, their families were impacted. But I remember you telling me about the first responders that were, that came to your collision and how it affected them. So maybe we talk about the collision a little bit and recap that.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, one of the things that I really want people to understand is, when you're involved in a crash, even a fatal crash, somebody dies, it doesn't just impact those people, that are in the car. It doesn't just impact the people that die. It impacts everybody in their lives, and it impacts all of the first responders, the police, the fire, the ambulance, the nurses, the doctors, everybody that's involved in helping that person, get back into life if with the survivors and the people that pass as well. So, it impacts the community as a whole. And from somebody went through it, and I'm going to slow down because I have a tendency to talk fast, and I'm going to slow down because I know that this is important. Um, when when people go through when I went through this, let me talk about me. When I went through this, we dealt with things as it came up. Struggling how to use my hands because my hands are burnt. My hands were left. This one was left in a fist position because I couldn't use it for a lot of things. I couldn't open it. I later had surgeries that were able to open the hand. This hand was quite contractured. It was my hands were a mess. So just using my hands was a big challenge, getting used to that, dropping things. And when you're not able to do the things you're used to doing, it impacts your mental health and your well-being.
Mhm.
So, for me, I thought after the crash, looking back, I was like, yeah, I think I was a pretty average kid. I had a bit of, challenges, and I was, upset a few times and things like that there. But when I go back and talk to some friends and stuff, like, John, you were a very angry person, looking back, yes, I can say that I was angry, and there were times that I did blow up and I was short with people, and I and that was my coping mechanism. Was it a good coping mechanism? No,
Yeah,
but it was what I did to get through the time that I went through.
and
And
you
now that
don't
I'm
have.
able to go back and
I'm
yeah,
sorry, I interrupt you again. I got to tell you that being angry when you're suffering the way you are is really understandable. I mean, they talk about lower back pain making people irritable, and you dealt with something a little bigger than that.
yeah, and so one of the big things is the how. the pain, the dressing changes, life being changed. And so for me, it's like, you know, in that time, I was angry. It wasn't until years later that I even started working through some of this. So the reason I was kind of sharing that is like when you're going through this, a lot of times we as human beings, we do what we need to do in the moment to get through it. When we get through it, we don't look back and analyze it and say, "Wow, that was some pretty crazy stuff I went through." We just put it in a little box and put it on the shelf and forget about it, and we never realize that because we never dealt with it, it's actually impacting us on a daily basis. And so there's triggers in the moment that cause us to get sidetracked or derailed, you know, um, and have us like blow up again or get. For me, it was like blowing up or getting angry, um, getting frustrated. And when I started working through some of this trauma, I learned to notice what my triggers are. Notice what are the things in the moment that are causing me to get stressed out, get frustrated, you know, and I can be like, "Oh, hey, wait, that's just a trigger. That's just a trigger. It's not happening in the moment, It's just a trigger
Yeah.
from my past." So it's pretty powerful. I love that I get to have these conversations. I've been through my journey and I've kind of overcome what I've overcome. So right now it's like focusing on helping other people get through whatever they need to get through so that they can live the life that they desire. Because I gotta say, I got a pretty awesome life right here.
And that's a long road. And people, I think, expect their they may look at you and say, "Oh, I wouldn't be able to get through it. He must be really he's like a superman to be able to do what he's done." Because it's hard to put anyone or have anyone put themselves in the position that you were in mentally, like to try and simulate that. And I think a lot of people just assume they'd give up, and you obviously didn't. Before I get into some other stuff, I've got a couple of questions that were asked of TikTok. Tracy would like to know what city this collision occurred in.
Yeah, so this happened. So I grew up in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, and so this crash happened between St. Stephen and Fredericton. So a little tiny community between the two towns, between the two cities.
And Big Jeff Fresh, one of our regular viewers and participants, has a question for you. After you woke up from the coma, what kind of things did the doctors tell you in terms of odds of recovery and such, and how did you cope with that information to drive you forward?
When I woke up from the crash, they didn't really give me odds of surviving because my initial coma, they put me in a coma to stabilize me because a lot of times what happens is your body starts to shut down and your body function fails and a lot of times people die. And I'm 75% burnt, and that's first to fourth degree burns, fourth degree being the most severe. And so 50% of my body required is third and fourth degree burns where it required skin grafting. And so my body was, extensively damaged, from the fire. Um, and and it was the medical community, the doctors and nurses in the burn unit in St. John, New Brunswick, that really helped me. And what they did is they put me in a drug induced coma so they could stabilize me. And then once I was stabilized, then they started working on me and started having surgeries and things like that there. So when I woke up, from this month long coma, I was stabilized. So there wasn't no chance of me, succumbing to the injuries because now I was stabilized. But what I want to say is they didn't think that I was going to make it the first 24, 48 hours, the first week. They thought I was going to succumb to the injuries. And so much so that the night that I was taken into the burn unit, the nurse that was on shift, she actually sat after her shift with me
Wow.
because my parents weren't there, and if I was to die, she wanted to make sure that somebody was sitting with me. Like that's the kind of care and support that I got through this work, through this whole ordeal, and that is why I am who I am today because it's that love and support from, people that don't even know me, like people that were there to help out. Like that's why I am the success I am today because I've had so much.
And that's incredibly powerful. First of all, that's amazing. Have you maintained any contact with the team that worked on you and essentially pulled you through?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with. Yes, you answered the question. Yes, I have. I do a lot of work with the burn community inside of Canada and the U.S. as well. So I sat on the Canadian burn survivor community for a while. I run the support group in Victoria for burn survivors. I'm a leader in the space of burn survivors and in kind of the space of Canada and the U.S. a little bit as well. And so I work with the different burn units directly with the hospitals, the physio, things like that. There, so I've gone back and connected with the nurses and doctors. My surgeon, who worked on me initially, um, I've connected with him. Super amazing guy,
Wow.
and I'll actually have him on my podcast, and hopefully in the new year where he's even come on the podcast.
Well,
Yeah.
I look forward to that episode. That's a story that I'll want to listen to. You
Yeah.
know, do you know the odds? Like, were you in an outlier case that where survival was slim and you made it through that challenge, whereas most people don't? Are you luckier? Was it truly just the care and attention or the drive to make it? Like, what what
Yeah.
happened? Like, it's
I love it. I love that question. Yeah, so percent wise, I don't know what the percent was of me surviving or not. They did, like I said, they didn't think I was going to make it. They thought I was going to die. So they put me in a drug induced state so I didn't experience the pain. They let me stabilize. If I was to pass, I wasn't going to experience the pain and not pass. If I stabilized, they'd start working on me, and I stabilized, and they started working on me. What was it that had me get through?
Mhm.
It's I was a fairly healthy kid. Like I was a little bit overweight, but I was a pretty healthy kid. I was never sick or things like that. There, I never, it wasn't like colds and things like that. There were common, whatever. But I was a pretty healthy, strong kid. I was 6'2", 240 pounds. I lifted weights growing up, and I was on the wrestling team. I was a pretty solid kid, so I was healthy. But it was I don't know, it was my psyche, my determination to get through. I've been through tough times before, so maybe my body, my brain wasn't that drug induced coma. I said, well, we'll get through this sort of thing. Because I grew up in New Brunswick when the time when being indigenous wasn't cool, and so I grew up. I'm a quarter indigenous. I'm Micmac from, we call it Micmac, Mi'kmaq from Nova Scotia, and I grew up when being indigenous wasn't cool. And I grew up in a community that was challenging for a kid to grow up in. I say that because I was teased and bullied like my other siblings and some of my cousins were teased and bullied growing up. That was that teasing and bullying, I think, helped me the most inside of recovering from this car crash because I got through it then, and I knew that growing up you're going to have these challenges in life, and when I woke up to this situation, it's like I I can get through this. I can, I'm going to be okay, and that's because I'm proud of who I am. And initially when I woke up and I first saw my face and I think I'm ugly, I think I'm broken, I think I'm destroyed. I think who's ever gonna wanna be my friend, who's ever gonna hang out with me, who's gonna wanna love me? And initially I would be single forever. I think, I was broken, ugly, destroyed. I thought I was unlovable. I thought I was damaged goods. I thought I'd never have a partner. And
And yet you do, and you have more than
yeah.
that.
Yes, I do. I have a partner now. I'm married now for 17 years and got three beautiful daughters. Yeah, yeah, a pretty amazing life. And lost train of thought where I was going with that. Yeah, but your question goes back to what were the percentage, like, what was it that had me get through? I don't know. That's a funny question. And we often look for what was it in you that had you get through this, and there's no one single thing. It's a combination of the love and support from my family, my community, that support and encouragement. I I recently had a conversation with my brother, my older brother, and it was it rocked me to my core because it kind of spoke to um the support I had. And I thanked him for everything he's done in my life because he's been a huge contribution to me. And one of the things that he said for to me was, I didn't want you to live in the basement for the rest of your life. And if you let that sink in for a moment, it speaks to what happens when we have visual differences, when we look different, we have body impairments, we don't fit in. A lot of times people shut out of society, they stop living, and they become, they live in the basement, or they live in the, in the remote areas because they can't deal with society, they can't deal with the questions, they can't deal with life. And the support that I had helped me so that I didn't stay living in the basement for the rest of my life.
And you're far from in the basement. You're traveling all over. You're speaking to rooms, if not giant events full of people telling your story. You couldn't be farther from the basement than you are now. The
What's funny about that though is my studio is in my basement of my house.
and yet there's a little lens that takes you everywhere else. No, but yeah, you've definitely gotten over that concept of closing yourself off in any way, shape, or form. But I totally get that, and I think people, regardless of what the difference is, regardless of what the thing is that they are concerned about, the interpretations of others, being criticized by others, find ways to live in the basement all the time. And overcoming that is huge, and it takes power, and you help people with that. I think we kind of skipped over very quickly what happened. Yes, there was a collision. I know that alcohol wasn't a factor in the collision itself, and I think a lot of people assume when there's a crash and it's involving kids and parties, and that it must be an alcohol involved party. But you did the right thing in that you had been drinking, and some of your friends were drinking, but the driver was sober.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. Our driver was sober. We were out on a road trip. It was about a month and a half before our high school graduation. We went on a road trip to a town another 45 minutes away from the town we were living in. And the night that we were out, well, it was our rule to we always had a sober driver no matter where we went. But we had a sober driver that night. Jimmy was our driver. No alcohol or drugs in the system, and it just came down to speeding was the big factor. The commotion inside the car. There was there was four teenage boys. Three of us were intoxicated by alcohol. The stereo's loud and cranked. The commotion that's going on. The inexperience at which Jimmy was driving with. He'd only been driving for a couple of years.
Okay.
He had previously lost his license for speeding, sort of thing. So there was a few factors that played into it, but alcohol wasn't directly involved. Like he wasn't impaired, but alcohol made an impact on how we made choices in the car. And yeah, we want to make sure that kids are having a safe drive or a sober driver when they're driving home, but we also want to make sure that kids are safe as well. And so I think that's the reason why you see, the legislation that has, young drivers have only allowed one or two guests in the car per se.
Right.
It's because of situations like this.
So where you may have been a distraction, or the mood in the car could have amped up the driving style. It could have contributed indirectly, even though the impairment wasn't there by way of alcohol. There were a lot of distractions, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, and when we left that we had made a pit stop. About halfway back, we stopped. We told the driver we got to get out and go pee. So Jimmy pulled over in a parking lot. We went out to the bushes, used the washrooms per se, and we grab another beer. We choose each other. We jump in the car. We crank the stereo, and we peel out of the parking lot. And we're flying down the highway. The stereo's cranked. We're laughing. We're goofing off. How many times have we been in this exact situation before, and nothing has ever happened? We'd been here before. We'd done this exact same thing. Nothing ever happened. My friends were doing it, and we were always doing this. All of our friends were doing this, and nothing has ever happened, But when you look at the situation, there's so many distractions, so many things going wrong in that situation, and Jimmy ended up losing control of losing control of the car. Not even a mile up or a kilometer up the road. Like it was just up around the corner, he had lost control of the car, so get out of control, hit the ditch, rolled several times, hit a telephone pole, burst into flames. Jimmy was ejected with such force that when he hit the pavement, he was killed instantly, and the car exploded. I'd managed to get out myself. I burned 75% of my body, and my two friends, Jason and Aaron, were killed in the crash. Uh, and it is the reason the crash happened is because of the distractions, the speed, the commotion, the things that happen when we get caught up in that moment and we're showing off. We're with our friends. We're doing the things we're not supposed to be doing. You know, we
It,
weren't
it's
focusing on the road.
it's funny that when drivers are driving, they should have one task, and that is driving and safely at that. And people discount the fact that people in the car can distract and cause issues and change the way that a day plays out. And obviously, yours was tragic. If you're watching and you haven't heard the beginning, John was the only survivor in that collision. His other friends perished as a result of it. And Akela Draconis, one of our regular viewers, asks, was it worse waking up to learn about your condition or finding out about your friends? Because I'm assuming you found out sometime after you came to and dealt with your own stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, it was there was so much going on. Like how when I first woke up from the coma, how it lived for me, seeing my body, seeing my face, dealing with my face, dealing with looking different. What got me through was, I was saying to myself, no matter how bad things are, Jason is going to be there because Jason was my best friend. He's going to be there to support me. He's going to be there to help me out. And I'll slow down again. I notice I'm speaking fast. Um, I had it in my head that he was going to be there to support me. He was going to be there to help me out, as well as Aaron and Jimmy. And when I found out that they were killed, because they didn't want me to focus on that, they wanted me to keep moving forward in recovery. And when I found out that they were killed, and it was the hardest thing that I had to go through. The guilt that I went through, being the only person to survive, the shame, the blame. My brain is trying to rack my head. Like, I must have done something because I survived. Here I'm the passenger. I survived. Now I'm burnt. And your brain is trying to rack, because, you're trying to think of what happened. Now, for me, what I want to share with the audience is this event was so traumatizing for me that my brain has blocked that out. There's a technical term for that called dissociative amnesia.
Wow.
And it's, I remember just before the crash and then waking up in the hospital a month later. So I don't remember any part of the crash. I don't remember any part of the trip to the local hospital in St. Stephen or the trip to the burn unit. I don't remember any part of talking to my parents, seeing my dad, talking to the paramedics, to the doctors and nurses. I don't remember any of that, but I was conscious. I was talking.
Wow.
I have a black spot in my memory. It was so traumatizing for me that I have dissociative amnesia. And I think I'm saying that term correctly.
I don't know the real term, so if it's wrong, I will just believe that you are correct. And that is our brain's ability to protect us from our own traumatic events, and that's good. You don't need to relive that in stereo and in 3D. Comment from TikTok. I cannot pronounce this name, but they ask or say that they remember learning this online in driving school and crying the entire time. So they've been exposed to your curriculum or your story at very least.
Awesome. We don't want people to cry, but we want people to get the message and shift behavior. But I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that my story has resonated with you, and so much so that it's made a difference in how you and your peers drive, and hopefully your family. The goal is not to tell people this is what you got to do, but to share with people here's the impact of when something goes wrong. We have traffic laws for a reason. When we obey traffic laws, the goal is that things are going to work out, and you got a greater chance when you follow the traffic rules. When you step outside of those traffic rules, and you're not paying attention to the road, things happen. And no matter what I want people to understand, and I'll slow down here, is no amount of "I'm sorry, I'll fix this" will ever change what happened or make up for what happened.
Yeah.
I was a passenger in that car, but I'll tell you, I was just as responsible as everybody in that car, including the driver. Not responsible in the sense of blame, but I was responsible for that situation happening. There was so many things I could have done differently, and I do the work that I do inside of road safety because I never want another teen or parent to ever lose somebody or have to go through this.
Now we spoke earlier about the fact that there was impact outside. I remember you telling me last time we spoke that the first on scene was it the firefighters that dealt with you at the roadside that they couldn't sleep for a month or something to that effect.
Yeah, it was not the paramedics, but it was it was the bystanders. The Some of the bystanders that were on site right away. Some of those guys, they're local people that are they're just living their life, and they attended to help out and stuff. And when I talked to them afterwards, some of them shared that they couldn't sleep for a month afterwards because every time they tried to close their eyes, all they could see or hear were sounds from and visuals from this horrific car crash that no person should ever have to witness. And it was such a horrific crash. Like, when I look back at it, because I've been through it, I often forget about the scope of this crash. And when I share it, but this crash was it impacted a whole community, like the community of St. Stephen and surrounding. Like, this was devastating. This changed people's lives. Like, this changed families. Yeah,
In
that was horrible.
Yeah, because you've got the families of those that died. There's your family, and your ongoing recovery, and the people that were involved in your recovery, and even I mean it echoes. And now we're doing positive things. You're doing positive things with this messaging. It's still the single source is still carrying an effect. Some of it was positive, or this is positive, and some of it was negative. And I don't think that people really understand the gravity of how one decision or event cascades into many long-term things, both good and bad, but there's a lot of tragedy here. And it is hard to truly comprehend that there was a crash, that three people died, one survived, and you are now dedicated to making effectively the world better. But there were so many people that are still grieving and hurting to this day because
Yeah, yeah,
of a fixed point in their lives that cannot change. And I talk
yeah.
about
I love that you say that. Yeah, it's exactly true. Like, we forget that you know when something like this happens, man, it impacts so many people, and no matter how much work we do on ourselves, no matter how much therapy and counseling we get, it's never going to go away. We can develop tools to help us in those moments that we're triggered and we have those thoughts and reminisce on what happened, and we're present to what happened. But it's never going to go away. I still have guilt and shame and blame around it. I just have the tools internally to say, wow, that's an old thought that comes back, but it still comes back. It still comes back not every day, but a lot of the time.
and but I like that you said that you have tools to deal with those feelings, and regardless of what it affects people, and everyone has their own stuff, and many of us learn tools to deal with things, and then and I talk to my kids about this. I talk about tools that I use, and they say, well, but it doesn't change anything. Well, no, it doesn't change anything, but you know how to put one foot in front of the other and keep doing what you need to do. It doesn't stop you, and it's about overcoming those hurdles and reinforcing that and working through the problems live all the time. And listen, I can't compare my story with yours. Everyone's got their own story, but everyone's got something to deal with, and hopefully
Yeah.
we don't make new things to deal with because adding compounds problems.
Yeah, and it's not about comparing like whose story is the worst, whose scar is the biggest, who's had the most damage, sort of thing. It's not about that, but it's about like giving people the tools to be able to get through those moments of adversity, those life challenges. It's helping people, in those moments that they think there's nothing that they can do, their life's over. Helping, in today's post-COVID world. Like I was just thinking about this the other day, like today in the last couple of days, how are people impacted from even COVID? Like we're I know that I'm finding myself, a little bit edgy sometimes and short and stuff, and I've got tools. I've got tools to use. And imagine though the people that don't have the tools and they're feeling defeated, they're feeling stuck, they're feeling depressed, they're feeling like there's no place, or no positive outcome.
Yeah.
And my goal right now is to help people with those thoughts to say, yeah, there is positive things. There is something you can do, and that thing that you're feeling is based on a thought and a thought that you think is true. But what's great about thoughts is they're not real. We can think something, we have a memory and stuff, but it's not real. Real like this is earphone case.
Yeah.
It's not real. Like it'll come and go based on a trigger in the moment, and when we discover that our thoughts are not real, we can let them go. We can create new thoughts. We can create new plans. What is that you want to create going forward? What is it that you want to do with your life? What do you want to create going forward? How do you want to use this story to make a difference in the world? Yeah. So that's what I'm up to now, is like helping people in that space of like, what's next? It kind of goes to this new branding I'm doing is what now? What do we want to do now? What's going? We've all been through these things. We've all have what we have. What now? What do you want to create going forward?
I love and we've both gone to Landmark Forum and had similar experiences with that. But I love that you talk about the story and the fact that we make stories and meanings from things in our lives and interpret things, and we have to catch ourselves and pull ourselves back from the story that we're writing, the interpretations of what happened, as opposed to what actually happened. And if you're hearing this for the first time, I don't talk about this stuff outside of conversations with John. But that's not my realm. I don't talk about empowerment and motivational speaking as much as I
You
talk about
should, Sean. You're awesome.
well, maybe we talk about teaming up. We'll have to do some motivational stuff. But it is really about knowing what and being able to differentiate and identify the story that we've written for ourselves that may or may not be real. And I don't mean that you didn't go to work today. I mean that when things happened at work today and you made it mean something, that it may not actually mean that, or it was never intended to mean that, and you've applied something to it that was never there, and as a result, are having a really bad day.
We're trying to make sense. We're trying to make sense of it. We're trying to figure out, well, why did this happen? Our brains are super awesome in that sense. Like we're always trying to figure out why did this happen, so that I know that, well, this means that. So then next time when it happens, we can do this so that this doesn't happen. That's what's so great about our brains. They work in this dual mode, and so what's great about that is noticing like we add so much of this, why did this happen to it? We're trying to figure out an answer when just being with it happened.
Yes.
Like this car crash happened. Like now what are we going to do about it? What do we want to do going forward?
Yeah.
You know?
I am boy mom left a comment saying, as a 911 dispatcher for 15 years, my heart aches for you. Your story will forever change many. And I assume it was lives that was where it got cut off. But the fact that you get out and talk about this stuff, even though you've been talking about it for a long time, you're always talking to a new audience. You're always helping new people. What is the big message? What is the big tool that you impart unto people? If you had to distill it, because obviously you do a lot of this, and it's not a one-stop shop. But what is the big message to tell people?
That's a good question. And I don't want to be quick to answer it because I want the big thing for me the big message is I want people to understand and get that no matter how crappy and hopefully I can say shitty, how shitty things are, how devastating things are, you can rebound. You can you can overcome it. You can create the life you desire, the life of your dreams, and get through it. Um, it just requires a few tools, some conversations, but I want you to know, no matter what you're going through, it's only temporary. It, you can overcome this. The trauma, the guilt, the shame, the blame, like all that stuff that I went through, it was only temporary. And I want people to understand that they can get through this, no matter how hard the day is, whatever they're dealing with. When we shift we shift our mindsets, we are able to create such powerful results in the future, and then take the actions that are consistent with that. And that's why I talk on mindset a lot, because when we when something happens to us and we say, I can't get through this, we're in that state of shock. We're coming from a past conversation of I can't do this. When in reality, if what we do is we can shift our mindsets and get through that initial conversation, say, yes, I can do this. And what do I need to do to get through this? What conversations do we need to have? Who do I need to partner with? Who do I need to talk to get through this? What do I need to do to move through this? But at the end of the day, I want people to understand that you can get through this, and life is amazing.
I think that's it's very interesting. If we distill it down to its simplest form, is that when you think you can't, don't listen to yourself and say you can, and then even if you're, you're lying to yourself because you don't believe it, put that in your head as a possibility, and move forward. But if you make the decision that you can't, and you double down on it, well, self fulfilling prophecies will see you fail. But you have the power to change that language, and language is important. And we listen to our own language. If we listen to ourselves, even when we're being nasty to ourselves, and we can do a lot of harm. So if everyone else is being crappy to you, you at very least need to be good to yourself.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I have this work in the school system in New Brunswick. We're creating this virtual workshop that kids can work through some of these things to develop those tools, to increase their mental health and well-being, to gain those tools and shift those mindsets. And, like I say, you're the only person that can talk yourself out of something.
I buy that. We have Diogo who just got into TikTok and says, "Just got here. What's going on?" And I haven't. We've just been in conversation, and I haven't really done this with the pitch and the reminder to everybody of what's going on and who you are and who I am. So first off, this is TPS Traffic Jam, and it's normally done pre-recorded or recorded behind the scenes and not done live. But we wanted to open it up, and John's brave, so we just said, "Hey, let's go." Not every guest wants to be live on the internet, but John Westhaver is who you're looking at, and he is a crash survivor and motivational speaker and all-around good guy. You can get him at johnwesthaver.com. And yes, and he puts pictures up like that all the time with your new swag. You have a new or it was a new shirt that I really like. The jersey, what was it?
Oh, the hoodie,
it
yeah.
was a cool one. Because we follow each other on all the different platforms, so I see all that stuff all the time. But we're talking about what are we talking? We're talking about the fact that you can life.
Yeah,
And
and that's
life
what's so
after.
great about your podcast, Sean. So that's what's so great about your podcast. You're willing to have these conversations outside of it, and it speaks to, you're not just a traffic cop. You don't just do this to tell people that they're wrong and give a ticket. You want to educate to make a difference. And so bringing people like myself on your show and talking about life, allows people to kind of get like, wow, this is why Sean does these conversations. This is why he does all these work. And you are Canada's greatest asset in the space of road safety.
Thank
And
you.
because like you're having these conversations, and what I love about your show is like, like come from the place of I know all. You're willing to admit when you're like, wow, I need to look at the answer up, like, and look into that and engage in the conversation. And for a lot of males, a lot of men in society, that is a hard thing to do because we get wrapped up in our identity. I got to know all the answers. And you're willing to have these conversations. In saying that, you're very knowledgeable about your job and the traffic laws. But there are moments where you're like, wow, like that's a good question. And that's what I
Absolutely.
love about that.
I appreciate that. I am very open to not knowing stuff, and I think the moment we think we know it all is 100% the time when we should rethink what we actually know at all. Like it goes to one of to a proverb that I'm not going to butcher by trying to remember right now, but essentially, you know, we're always learning, and I'm happy to accept that I don't know everything because I can't know everything. And it's funny when I listen to you talk about all the motivational stuff. I'm reminded about conversations when I had my crash. Now my crash was nowhere near as serious as yours, but I had a lot of stuff to deal with. For you talk about a male having issues saying that they are not knowing everything or wrong. Well, I was a cop who loved being a cop who couldn't be a cop in the traditional sense of the word. I couldn't go out on the road. I was injured. I was off for 3 months living on my couch. I could barely go upstairs, never mind go out and enforce laws. And I really had to find a way to contribute to society and not just to society because somebody else has. I needed a way to contribute so I could feel good that I was doing what I was meant to be doing, which is helping people. And when I found myself in social media, which was totally unplanned, by the way, I found something that really made me happy. Now, my family makes me happy, and my wife is magical and makes me happy, but I needed to make myself happy. And I needed to do that by way of contributions in a way that mattered to me. And I get to do that every day on social media. And I remember telling my boss at the time. I think I've told you the story, but we pitched this the whole TikTok thing sort of quietly, and we started trying it out and experimenting. We wanted to know what we were dealing with before we started going up the chain of command and saying, "Hey, we're going to do this social media thing." And I remember talking about what it meant to me in an office meeting, and I got misty eyed because it was the first time since my collision that I felt like a cop again. Even though I was a police officer wearing a uniform, doing stuff in the office, I was an administrator, but now, but this was important. Anyway, that's my shtick.
No, it speaks to what I love about you sharing that. Excuse me, is what people don't understand is when you're involved in a collision, and you're not able to do your job, it impacts your psyche. It impacts how you operate. It impacts your mental health and well-being. And so all the stuff that I do and all the stuff that you do in the space of road safety, helps people in that space so that they don't have to experience that. And so when we can see that, when you're involved in these crashes, man, it's going to mess with you. When you're not able to be that man that you know yourself to be, that impacts you. That impacts your marriage, your life, your kids, your family. Yeah, it does.
But if you were a doctor, I mean, okay, here's a really bad example. If you've seen Marvel's Doctor Strange, here's a doctor who was saving lives. He was basically a miracle worker, and then suffered a collision where he lost control of a Lamborghini off the side of a mountain because he was driving too quickly, smashed his hands and could no longer be a surgeon. It's not man, woman. It's whatever it is that is important to you. When change is thrust upon you and you can't do what you did yesterday, that's crisis in a big way. And I mean, by no means this. We're in the same situation. You had a long road to recover. Well, I'm still recovering from mine, but it's a long road for recovery that I don't think anybody outside of being in your shoes can truly know the depth of. And it's empowering and motivating to listen to you, speak about your experiences. And I want to actually see your whole sort of presentation. So we have to get together. I have to come out and see you live. We've only met online and done things like this, but we've talked about getting together before. We really have to make it happen.
Well, that's what's great about this. Is I'm looking at creating some more presentations in Ontario and the Maritimes and all across Canada. So if anybody is watching this and they want to look at booking me, reach out to me. johnwesthaver.com. And yeah, and we'll book some presentations in your area. So
I
we do have a little bit of availability in this fall and winter, but yeah, let's make this happen.
Sounds like a good plan. And if you're watching, you've been part of a live recording of TPS Traffic Jam, which will eventually be recorded or edited and made fancier and rebroadcast. But we can do this for hours, which is probably what happened last time. We just keep going and going, like Energizer rabbits. We keep talking, but I want to thank you for spending some time with me because we'll do this again for sure because there's other things to talk about. But we keep going down these rabbit holes of goodness and finding nuggets of things to talk about. To all those who provided or contributed questions and shared their feelings, thank you very much for participating. Because when you share of yourself, it's really awesome. Jonathan says, "I enjoy listening to you guys." Well, thank you very much. Maybe we should schedule this on a regular basis and just need to keep doing it. But either way, we will do this again. We'll hopefully see you in person soon. And again, to everyone who was watching, thanks very much. Anything you want to leave with the wonderful people watching?
No, thank you for watching and drive safe and have an awesome day.
Have an awesome day, an awesome week, an awesome month, an awesome life. But tune in and definitely go and check out johnwesthaver.com. See well, we know that there's going to be stuff that speaks to you. See if you can find some value in what he's got. And if you've got someone that you think would benefit from hearing his story or having him come out to an event to speak, because that's what you do. You're a professional speaker. Consider him for that. And yeah, until next time. My name is Sean Shapiro. I'm a police officer who does stuff on TikTok, not dancing, but who talks about stuff and things. And thank you again, John, for spending time. I will see you soon.